My dad pushed me aside for his stepson, so I took my mom's side when they divorced. Imagine overhearing your own father, the man who raised you, say he finally has the son he always wanted, and realizing with a gut-wrenching punch that he wasn't talking about you. That single, devastating sentence shattered my entire world and ignited a battle for my place in my own family. And trust me, the betrayal was only just beginning. I was 18 and for most of my life I thought my family was solid. It was just me, my dad 46 and my mom 48. Yeah, we had our ups and downs like any family, but we always seemed close. Or so I thought. Our home in the suburbs, a typical, comfortable existence. I'd spend weekends with my dad tinkering in the garage, building model rockets, or hiking the trails outside Denver with my mom, laughing about anything and everything. There was a sense of belonging, a quiet certainty that we were us. Things started really falling apart a couple of years earlier when I was 16. My parents' marriage was already under strain, mostly because of financial problems. My mom had lost her job, and the stress of bills piling up turned into constant, soul-crushing arguments. The tension was a palpable, suffocating weight in every room. At first, they tried to shield me from it, whispering behind closed doors, but it wasn't long before every dinner turned into a shouting match, the clatter of forks against plates barely audible over their raised voices. So, when they finally announced they were divorcing, I wasn't exactly shocked. But it still hit me hard. It felt like the bedrock of my world was crumbling. My mom moved out almost immediately, and for a while, it was just me and my dad. I tried desperately to keep things normal, to fill the silence, but the atmosphere in the house was heavy, thick with unspoken grief and resentment. It felt like the air itself was sad. It wasn't long before my dad started dating again. And within a year he remarried. His new wife, Rachel, came with a 17-year-old son named Jason. Jason was the kind of person who just lights up a room. He was bubbly, outgoing, charming. Basically everything I'm not. He had an easy confidence, a ready laugh, a knack for making people feel special. When they first moved in, I genuinely thought we might actually get along. I made an effort, tried to bond with him, inviting him to hang out, to shoot hoops in the driveway. But it felt like he was always a step ahead, effortlessly grabbing my dad's attention. He had this natural, effortless ability to draw people in, to hold court. And before I knew it, my dad was completely, utterly enamored with him. My stomach would tighten watching them, seeing a connection I once had now shared and then replaced. At first it was small things. My dad would rave about Jason's accomplishments at dinner, about how smart he was, how athletic, how much potential he had. And then, suddenly, every single family outing revolved around Jason. My preferences, my interests, my quiet suggestions were gently, almost imperceptibly, sidelined. For my last birthday, my dad got me a cake and a sweater. Just a sweater. A nice enough sweater, but just a sweater. When Jason's birthday rolled around a couple of months later, they threw him a massive, over-the-top party. The house was filled with caterers, a DJ, balloons, and streamers. And then they surprised him. With a car. Not just any car, a shiny, brand new one with a big red bow on top. I had never received anything close to that. Not even when I graduated. The contrast was like a physical punch to the gut. The unfairness burned. I tried talking to my dad about how I was feeling, about how unfair it felt, how much it hurt, but he just brushed me off. His face would harden, his voice dismissive. He said I was being ridiculous, that I needed to stop being jealous. Jealous? That word stuck with me, stinging. Was I jealous? I didn't think so. I just wanted to feel like I still mattered. Like I was still his son. Like I wasn't being slowly erased. Around this time, I started spending more and more weekends at my mom's place. It became my sanctuary. I poured out everything to her. The car, the parties, the constant praise for Jason, the way my dad looked at him. She was furious on my behalf, her eyes flashing with a protective anger that soothed my wounded pride. She reassured me that it wasn't all in my head, that my feelings were valid, that I wasn't crazy. She encouraged me to stand up for myself. But it wasn't easy. Rachel had subtly but firmly started influencing how things were run at home, always talking about how a blended family should work, but it was clear that her absolute priority was Jason. It felt like I was the odd one out in my own house, a guest in a home that used to be mine. Family holidays became unbearable. Jason was always the center of attention, the golden boy, while I was more of an afterthought, a shadow lurking at the edges. One Christmas, my dad canceled a vacation we had been planning for years, a trip to the national parks, saying we couldn't afford it. Later, with a sickening thud, I found out the money had gone to fund Jason's extracurricular activities, a prestigious summer camp, new sports equipment. It was another slap in the face, another stark, painful reminder of where I stood. Jason, for his part, wasn't exactly innocent. He had a knack for manipulating situations to his advantage, a sly smile that could turn innocent. Anytime there was tension, anytime I seemed to be getting any attention, he'd subtly play the victim, making it seem like I was the problem, the difficult one, the one causing all the drama. He'd sigh dramatically, or whisper a complaint just loud enough for Rachel to hear. It was infuriating. I started keeping my distance, pulling away, retreating into myself, but that only made things worse. The more I pulled away, the more my dad seemed to cling to Jason as if to prove a point. The breaking point came one evening. I was walking past the kitchen and I overheard my dad talking to Rachel, his voice light, filled with a warmth I hadn't heard directed at me in years. He was laughing. And then he said something along the lines of, "I'm just so lucky to finally have the son I always wanted." That sentence. It felt like a knife twisting in my chest, a cold, sharp blade. My breath caught in my throat. Every happy memory with my dad, every lesson, every shared moment felt poisoned. It was like he was rewriting our entire history, erasing me from it, in that single, cruel declaration. I didn't confront him right away. I couldn't. The words were a physical weight in my chest, suffocating me. I just went to my room, packed a bag, my hands trembling, my eyes blurring, and called my mom. She heard the tremor in my voice, the unspoken pain, and just said, "Come home, honey. Now." By the end of the week, I had officially moved in with her. Looking back, I think that was the moment everything changed. It wasn't just about Jason anymore. It was about realizing that my dad didn't see me as a priority. He hadn't for a long, long time. Moving out was my way of taking control, reclaiming a piece of myself, but I knew it was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. A battle not just for his affection but for my own sense of worth. When I moved in with my mom, it felt like stepping into a whole new world. Her apartment, smaller than my dad's house, felt enormous, expansive with her warmth. She didn't just welcome me with open arms, she made it clear that her home was now my home. She helped me set up my room, gave me space to breathe, and even found some old photos of us to hang on the walls, pictures from a time when our family felt whole. It was comforting, a balm to my raw nerves, but there was no time to truly settle in. The fallout from my decision hit fast. My dad's reaction came almost immediately. His phone calls were relentless. He left a barrage of voicemails, each one dripping with accusations of being ungrateful, selfish, abandoning him. He kept saying things like, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" He wasn't interested in understanding why I left. He was solely focused on making me feel guilty for doing it, for disrupting his new perfect family image. His voice, once a source of comfort, now just filled me with a cold dread. Jason wasted no time making his feelings known either. Within days of me moving out, he started posting little digs on social media, sly, passive-aggressive remarks designed to stir the pot. One of his posts was a picture of him sitting in the gleaming new car my dad had bought him, with a caption, "Guess I'm the only son now." Another was a group photo from a family dinner I wasn't invited to, everyone smiling widely, captioned, "Family first." It didn't take long for mutual friends to notice, and soon the rumors started flying at school. The split wasn't just at home, it permeated every corner of my social life. Extended family members began taking sides too. Some of them, quietly, reached out to me saying they understood why I left, and even admitted they'd noticed how my dad was treating Jason differently, how uncomfortable it had made them. Others, though, sided fiercely with my dad, claiming I was being dramatic, ungrateful, and that I should just go back home to fix things. It felt like the entire family was being dragged into the mess, and I was at the center of a public spectacle. As if all that wasn't enough, my mom, with a determined glint in her eye, told me she was reopening the divorce proceedings. Apparently, there were financial disputes that hadn't been fully resolved, and my dad's recent reckless spending, especially on Jason, was raising red flags with her lawyer. My mom, being my mom, was fiercely protective. She wanted to make sure I'd be taken care of, that my future wouldn't be jeopardized by his self-serving actions. So, she decided to fight for some of the assets my dad had claimed, to ensure my security. Meanwhile, my dad continued his campaign to get me to come back. He sent me long, emotional messages about how much he missed me and how he wanted things to go back to the way they were. But his words always rang hollow. He never addressed the real issues, the blatant favoritism, the emotional neglect, the way he consistently prioritized Jason over me. It was always about his pain, never mine. My mom suggested I try therapy to process everything. And honestly, it was one of the best decisions I made. Talking to someone neutral, someone outside the swirling storm, helped me untangle a lot of what I was feeling, to separate his issues from my worth. It not only helped me heal, but it also gave me the confidence to start truly standing up for myself. I learned to identify his manipulative tactics. I stopped answering his guilt-tripping messages. And when he brought up Jason, I calmly but firmly shut the conversation down. Jason wasn't giving up his games though. At school, he intensified his campaign, spreading stories about how I'd abandoned our blended family because I was too jealous and couldn't handle sharing attention. Mutual friends were caught in the middle, torn between loyalty. It felt like every hallway I walked down was filled with whispers, every glance a judgment. But by then, armed with my therapist's insights and my mom's unwavering support, I was starting to realize that his manipulation only worked if I let it. So I stopped engaging. I walked away from his provocations. I met his smug glances with a blank stare, which seemed to frustrate him even more. The legal proceedings brought another unexpected layer of drama. My mom's lawyer wanted my perspective on everything that had been happening at home. I didn't hold back. I talked about the canceled vacation, the new car, the over-the-top parties, and even that gut-wrenching overheard conversation where my dad had called Jason the son he'd always wanted. It wasn't easy recounting those painful moments, but it felt necessary. It felt like I was finally speaking my truth, giving voice to years of silent hurt. During all this, my dad's obsession with Jason became even more obvious, almost desperate. He started posting pictures online almost daily with gushing captions like, "So proud of my handsome boy and couldn't ask for a better son." He never mentioned me. Not once. It stung, each post a fresh wound, but it also validated my decision to leave. It confirmed that he wasn't just favoring Jason. He was actively erasing me from his narrative, from his public life. My mom was my rock through all of it. She kept reminding me that I deserved better and that none of this was my fault. Her unwavering belief in me was a lifeline. She also encouraged me to set firm boundaries with my dad, which turned out to be one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. The breaking point came when my dad, in a desperate attempt to regain control, confronted me in public. He showed up outside my school, a scene straight out of a bad drama, demanding to talk. He was loud enough to draw a crowd, and I could feel everyone's eyes on us, the whispers starting. He kept asking why I was doing this to him, why I was ruining everything, but I didn't take the bait. I calmly, clearly, told him that I'd be happy to talk when he could respect my boundaries and left it at that, walking away from his angry, bewildered face. Walking away was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but it was the right thing to do. After that, I stopped engaging with him entirely. I told him I wouldn't respond to any messages unless they were respectful and addressed the real issues. It was a tough stance to take, but it was the only way to protect my peace, my sanity. My mom supported me every step of the way, a fierce, quiet advocate for my well-being. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was starting to regain control of my life, to chart my own course. Not long after I set those firm boundaries with my dad, he went completely silent. No calls, no emails, nothing. It was almost eerie, the sudden void. For the first time in months, there wasn't a single message blaming me for something or trying to guilt me into coming back. It felt like he had finally given up, but the calm was unsettling, like the quiet before a storm. Jason's life wasn't going much better. His manipulative nature, once seen as charming by some, had finally caught up with him. Friends at school, tired of his antics, started actively avoiding him, and even some of his biggest supporters among the extended family distanced themselves. The stories about his behavior at the dinner, especially his little power speech, had spread like wildfire, and his reputation was in shambles. For someone who thrived on constant attention and being the favorite, the isolation must have been unbearable, but I wasn't going to let his misery drag me back into his drama. Rachel's financial troubles reached their peak. Her business, which my dad had secretly been propping up, was failing miserably and creditors were closing in. She was slapped with a major lawsuit, a public and humiliating blow. The case caused a huge strain on their household, and the lavish lifestyle they'd been desperately trying to maintain started to crumble. Jason's special surprises and over-the-top birthday celebrations were a thing of the past. From what I heard through mutual acquaintances, things were tense and ugly in their house. Doors slamming. Raised voices. The Golden family facade was cracking, but I wasn't interested in getting involved. Around the same time, my mom started dating someone new. His name was Carl and he was genuinely kind, a breath of fresh air. He didn't try to overstep or act like a replacement dad, but he was always supportive and encouraging. He joined us for dinner sometimes and made an effort to get to know me without prying into the drama. It was a nice, stable change and it was clear my mom was genuinely happy, her own wounds slowly healing. In therapy, I reached a point where I could finally, truly let go of the deep-seated resentment I'd been holding onto toward my dad. Forgiveness didn't mean I was ready to reconcile, or that I condoned his actions. It meant releasing myself from the constant, corrosive weight of anger and bitterness. I realized I couldn't change him or make him see things my way, but I could move forward without letting his actions define me or hold me captive. School became my main focus, my sanctuary, and the effort paid off. I earned a scholarship for academic excellence, a tangible reward for my hard work, and received recognition from my teachers for some of my projects. It felt incredibly good to see my own efforts paying off, to achieve something purely for myself. My mom was over the moon, her joy infectious, and Carl even baked me a cake to celebrate, a small, sweet gesture that meant the world. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was building something positive and enduring for my future, not just reacting to someone else's chaos. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my uncle. My dad had experienced a minor health scare and was in the hospital. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was enough to shake him. My uncle, ever the mediator, thought I should visit, and after some hesitation I decided to go. Walking into his hospital room was awkward, sterile. He looked surprised to see me, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, but didn't say much. I sat down and we had a brief, polite conversation about his condition, the bland hospital food, and how he was feeling. It wasn't a heartwarming reunion, not by a long shot, but it wasn't hostile either. Jason wasn't there, which didn't surprise me. From what I'd heard, he'd grown increasingly bitter about my absence, feeling abandoned by my dad's attention, and had started pulling away from everyone, becoming withdrawn and angry. When I visited the house later to drop off some things for my dad, Jason barely acknowledged me. He seemed cold and distant, a shadow of his former charming self, like he couldn't decide whether to ignore me completely or start a fight. I wasn't interested in either option. Before leaving the hospital, my dad and I had a surprisingly candid conversation. I told him, clearly and without anger, that I cared about him, but for any real relationship to work, things would have to fundamentally change. I was clear about what I needed: respect, boundaries, and absolutely no more blatant favoritism. He nodded along, his gaze distant, and even admitted he'd made mistakes, but he still wasn't ready to take full, honest accountability for his actions. It felt like he was trying, yes, but not enough to bridge the gaping chasm between us. When I told my mom about the conversation, she gave me some sage advice that stuck with me. She reminded me that not all relationships could be repaired, and that, hard as it was okay. What truly mattered was that I had tried, that I had shown up. I couldn't control whether my dad changed, but I could absolutely control how I moved forward, how I protected my peace and built my own future. A few months later, I moved out for college. Packing up my things and saying goodbye to my mom and Carl was bittersweet, a mix of excitement and a touch of melancholy. But I was mostly excited for the fresh start, the blank slate. As I settled into my dorm and began classes, immersed in a new world, I truly realized how far I'd come. The toxic environment I'd grown up in no longer had a hold on me. I was free to focus on my future, on my studies, on the life I wanted to build. Looking back, the entire agonizing experience taught me the invaluable lessons of self-respect and the unwavering power of boundaries. It wasn't easy to stand up for myself, to challenge the very foundation of my family, but it was profoundly worth it. To anyone in a similar situation, caught in the web of manipulation and favoritism, my advice is simple: prioritize yourself. You can't change other people, no matter how much you wish you could, but you can always choose to protect your own peace, your own well-being. Walking away isn't always easy and it leaves scars, but sometimes it's the only way to truly, authentically move forward. What would you have done if your dad called another kid the son he always wanted? Have you ever had to choose between your family and your own peace? How did you navigate those impossible waters? I really want to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.